morning. Good morning. Can you all hear me? Hello. Good morning. My name is Lawrence Newman. I'm the chairman of the Trust. Thank you all very much for coming. It's great to see so many people here. I have to say it's unusual to get such a turnout for a board meeting, but I do understand why you're here. And because of that, what we've decided to do is to change the normal order of our board. Normally we would take questions at the end of our board, but because of the evident interest in this particular topic, what we're going to do is Daniel, our Chief Exec, is going to give a brief presentation. We'll then take questions, and because I don't know too many of you, it'd be really helpful if you just say who you are and where you live, because that's always very helpful for us. And we'll take questions, we'll give answers, and we have allowed, because obviously we've got quite a lot of other stuff to do this morning, so we've allowed up to 45 minutes for the whole, this part of it, of the day. And then obviously at the end of this session, you're all very welcome to attend our regular board meeting, but I entirely understand if you'd rather go and do something else. Anyway, so welcome on behalf of the Trust, and my fellow non-exec directors and exec directors are in the room, dotted around, but I think because time is limited and I know you want to get on with, if you like, the meeting today, I would ask Daniel if you'd like to step up and do the presentation. Thank you.
So before you start, can I ask a question, please?
Hello, Bob.
So, are there questions on the board meeting at the end?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't make that clear. For those
Thank
of
you
you who
very
want to
much.
come to the regular board meeting, we'll do that in the regular way with questions. But the questions at the regular board meeting won't be about this, because this is the opportunity to discuss this.
Sure thing.
Okay, Bob?
Yes, just straightening things out.
Great.
We need to get everyone to be able to sit down before we start. So there's two seats in the middle. We've got a seat at the front. We've got one by the door. How many? Richard. And then if some of my colleague direct people can stand up, then some of the public can sit. That would be, I think, better. So now we've got a whole row at the front. Okay, are we okay to go? So this is now more full than it is when we have the hospital grand round. So this is a presentation about our land sale and how it fits into sorting out Epsom Hospital in the here and now, and also about the long-term future of Epsom Hospital.
Could you use the microphone?
Oh, is it not a bit too far away? Does that work better? Yeah. Right. Okay. So this is going to take about 10 minutes to go through. So the first slide is, why do we need to do something about our buildings? And the answer is, we have had decades of planning blight on Epsom and Helier hospitals and have missed out on lots and lots of capital as a result of people not knowing what the long-term future is. And as a result, we have buildings that are really not fit for purpose and are actually becoming completely unsafe. And these are some of the images of parts of Epsom Hospital. And we're at the stage now where some of the buildings will cost more to fix than actually could ever be usably worth. And the problems this is causing for patients are, we've got infection control issues, we have privacy and dignity issues because we don't have enough single rooms, we have temperatures that are completely uncontrollable in lots of clinical spaces, which I'll come to in a minute. We have windows that don't open, so Chris wrote to me earlier in the week about a complaint about maternity. Well, the reason why the windows are sealed up in maternity is the frames are so warped that the windows will fall out of the frames if we don't seal them shut. and we've got the issue of we've got one wall block on this side which isn't connected to the rest of the hospital, so you have to move people in the rain outside when they need transferring. The impact of our buildings at Epsom is causing more and more difficulties in us providing good patient care. So this list is just some of the things that have happened this summer. We had a complete breakdown of all the lifts in Wellswing. That's the building you're sitting in. That's where most of the wards are. There are only 2 inpatient bed lifts in Wellswing. When both broke, we had to close A&E for a bit because we couldn't safely get people from A&E to ITU or to theatres. Those 2 lifts are 40 years old. They have an amazing maintenance contract on them, but when they break, they were custom made for the building. The parts are no longer made. To get a gearbox changed on one of the lifts, that's £32,000. And we're now at the stage where all of the lifts in this building are completely time expired, and they need to be replaced. And it's just like the tube. So you know when you go on the tube and you see an escalator and it says, we've taken this out of service for 16 weeks to renovate the whole thing, that's what we need to do to the lifts. The problem is, if we take one of the lifts out in Wellswing, we only get left with one that's working. They're so unreliable that to expect us to go for 16 weeks with only one lift working is likely to mean we have to close quite a lot of services because it won't be safe. So what we're actually now working on is kind of how to build a new lift shop outside Wellswing so we can build a new lift to enable us to then renovate the existing lifts. It's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds that we need to do a project like that. Another example recently, all the hot weather caused 80-year-old electrical switchgear on this site to melt. The melting meant one of the buildings, Rowan House, had no power, and we had to hire in generators from Wales to keep the services going. We've also had floods, sewage ingresses, and even some of the new things we built, like the new A&E, ended up with some legacy design issues from the past. So it is having quite an impact on our ability to provide you with high quality care. So what I'm really pleased to be able to talk about is that we have secured from the top of the NHS and from the Department of Health and essentially from the government £100 million to sort out, it's called critical backlog infrastructure maintenance. All of the issues in Epsom and Helier that are causing us not to be able to provide safe care because of our buildings, we have now secured enough money from the government over the next 3 years to sort it all out. So it is one of the most exciting things that's actually happened for Epsom and Helier, which is a massive, and we're calling it £100 million makeover underway. And you can see it happening today if you walk around the site. So if you go to the back of the site, you'll see a building called Wood Cookwing, which was derelict. It's full of builders as we're now converting it back into full clinical space. And I hope some of you who passed from the visitor car park will see the very big banner we've put up next to it to celebrate the investment that we've got for both our hospitals. Now, the rub in getting the £100 million investment is that some of this investment is based on selling land on our sites that we are not using and we don't think we ever will use in the future. And that's all part of a government plan to say the public sector is sitting on a lot of land and it should be releasing it for housing because there's a national housing shortage if you can demonstrate the land isn't needed. And what we have agreed with NHS is all of the land sale proceeds from Epsom will all get reinvested in Epsom Hospital. And some of the projects that the money from the land sale is going to pay for, and this is the cost of this project on the list is more than the land sale, because part of our £100 million investment is not just land sale money, it's new money, a new £25 million that we didn't have, that we have been given. It's going to pay for the following things. A new outpatient suite, so people don't have to wait in the main hospital corridor. That's what we've started building already. A bridge between this building and Langley Wing, so patients don't have to go outside. A further expansion of A&E. We did one expansion last year, and by the end of August, the builders will be able to do a further expansion because A&E is really important and it's getting really busy. So, when I started 4 years ago, we were at 120 patients on a very busy day in Epsom. We're now at 200 patients on a very busy day at Epsom for A&E. We have to have a bigger space. We are going to do a multi-million-pound window replacement programme, so we don't have to have any sealed up. We're going to build a new paediatric daycare unit. We're going to extend adult day case recovery so we can do more planned care surgery. We're going to build a new energy centre, and that will mean we can have air conditioning, because I've got all these complaints currently about it's too hot. And the issue is not that we couldn't go around hiring lots of mobile air conditioning units, it's if we plug them in, we'll blow the whole electricity supply to the site. And we're going to sort out car parking by building a multi-storey car park. So this is a site plan of Epsom Hospital. You're sitting here, Wells Wing, the main ward block. The land that we have put up for sale is over there, the green bit. The buildings that are in the green bit are either derelict, beyond economic repair, and they're not being used for clinical services apart from one which has a gym, which we're going to move to Langley Wing. So there is almost no patient care activity in it. It's got administrative space, or it's not being used at all because it's being condemned already. Now, this is where I really need to apologise to everybody, because in order to sell the land, you have to go through a process. And to go through the process, you have to talk to people about what are you going to use the land for. And we had conversations, which we've been doing for well over a year, because in order to get this £100 million, I can't tell you the amount of negotiation we had to have with the centre and the amount of detail they have wanted in the workup of all the plans. So yes, we've been talking about selling this land for quite some time. And we did have a conversation about what is the maximum residential value you could get for the land. And it is true, we have a master plan that says 195 units of accommodation. It would be very dense, but that is the brief we were working to. It became very clear when we actually surfaced that this is what we were going to do with the council, with Chris, with local people, that wasn't going to be acceptable. So we have now altered the master plan brief in response to that feedback. And the brief now says we're looking for a master plan that says we want social care provision, affordable housing for NHS staff, and we do need some residential accommodation too to maximise the land sale value. I am really, really sorry that an advert went out in the property press that did not reflect the agreement that we had made. That is a complete error on my part that happened. We have a very ambitious estate agent working for us who got a bit ahead of themselves. We have changed the brief, we have changed the guidance to them. This is what we're now looking for, and we have a meeting set up with Epsom Council at the beginning of September to agree what this would look like. So that is what we are hoping to deliver based on your feedback. It will mean that the money we get from the land sale will be less than we had anticipated, but we believe we will still get enough to enable us to carry on with making our £100 million investment. But I really would like to apologise to everybody that that advert went out because it was not intended. Then you get onto the question, which says, well, if you sell this land, could you build a new hospital at Epsom if Epsom becomes the chosen site for a new hospital for the trust? And the answer is, yes, you can. So the blue is where you put a new hospital. So this is the Dorking Road. And you would put it on the front car park and on Helier Wing. And the reason why you put it there is because it joins in to where the acute clinical services are most easily. So there's A&E, there's the ward block you're currently in, and that's going to be where diagnostics is. So you make a really sensible hospital for the future, as opposed to lots of bolt-on buildings. In the work we have done to design that space, if that is what gets chosen in the end of a consultation, we have followed all of the guidance about how to build each of the departments. So each department would need all of 21st century healthcare planning space. We have thought about all the services we would need to decant to build that, and we have factored that capital in. We have worked out the site compounds that you'd have to have if you were going to build that and keep a hospital going, and we've worked out the traffic flows. So we know that this is deliverable, and then we also know, not that we have yet asked, but we're pretty confident it would get planning permission, because the front of it, here, so this is the Dorking Road, that's only 3 stories. That is no higher than the buildings on the other side of the road, and it gets to be less high than Wells Wing, which is the building we're currently in. So it will look in keeping, in fact it will actually make more sense of the hierarchy of space that we currently have. Now, what happens if we don't sell the land? Well, as it currently stands, if we don't sell the land, we will not be able to carry on with the investment programme that we have planned, because this is a cyclical. We generate money, we get it back as capital. We will miss our financial target for the year. We have been set a target by the government to make a deficit of £14 million. We are currently spending £3 million a month more than we earn. That's £36 million. The land sale helps bridge the gap between the two. And if we achieve our control total, we actually get given a bonus payment in the way that NHS finances are organised of at least £15 million. And when you are in deficit, you need cash. Because if you try running your own business and you're running a deficit, you don't have enough cash, you've got to pay the staff. So we need to get the cash. I have a worry that if we get out of the amazing place we got the trust into, where we are seen to deliver the money and we're seen to deliver good performance, that if we don't deliver one of those things, we open up the question about what's the future of Epsom and St Helier before we've actually got to a long-term answer, because we've become an unsustainable provider again. And the thing I'm most worried about is if we don't sort out our buildings, we may have to close services on a temporary basis while we urgently have to repair something because it's not safe to carry on, like we had to do with A&E earlier in the summer. So I think there's some quite big issues if we don't make the land sale. And then to get back to being positive, look, we've already been doing lots of investment in the last year on Epsom site. So this is the opening of a new paediatric outpatient unit. This is the opening of the urgent treatment centre. This is the new surgical, the surgical suite. So when you come in for surgery on this site, you now go to a dedicated place rather than going to a ward first. This is the new maternity outpatients. This is the new canopy for paediatric outpatients. And that's a new endoscopy dishwasher. So that's £1 million of dishwashers, so that when we do endoscopies, the scopes are clean and sterile and aren't going to cause you a health hazard. So we believe this land sale is key to our successful future, and it's not an obstacle to it. And I suppose I just wanted to end with a personal reflection. So I've been the chief executive now for 4 years. I think that it's really clear to me we have got to get to a long-term sustainable future for Epsom and St Helier. But that might not happen. Right? There is a lot of hurdles to overcome to get a massive investment in our local NHS to get to a new hospital. So I desperately want it to happen, we desperately want it to happen, but it might not. And in the context of it might not, boy do we have to do our best to keep Epsom and St Helier, as they currently are, delivering the best care that we can. And to do that, we've got to have buildings as good as we can get them. And this opportunity we now have to spend so much money on them is an opportunity I don't want to look in the mouth. I think we just have to bite the bullet and do it. And I know that we can build a new hospital at Epsom if that's the change. So I know that if we did get to build a new hospital at Epsom, we could do it. I know that we need to do the investment now to keep the services for you going in the here and now, and it's really important. And I've probably spoken for far too long. And
Thank you very much, Daniel. We now have some time for questions, and there are a forest of hands going up. But I was going to actually invite your local MP, Chris Grayling, because I know that he has very clear feelings on this matter, and I'd like Chris to share those, if he would.
So Daniel, you look at this presentation and say, very plausible, understand what you're trying to do, but there's a huge but here, and there's 2 or 3 huge buts. The first is that the NHS has once again, as people know, started a process of discussion about the future of Epsom and Helier hospitals and whether to have a new acute centre as well, as you highlighted from that plan there. Now, you have given us assurances that that can happen here anyway. I have to say that just simply walking around the car park this morning, looking at the amount of land that that would take up, looking at the amount of land that is currently being used for parking spaces at the back by staff and others, I question whether just an extra layer on the car park would cope with the loss of parking elsewhere on the site, let alone the number of people who would be turning up for the new acute centre. I also, some who've been around for longer than many will remember that some years ago, long before Daniel's time, long before Lawrence's time, Adrian White and I came up with a proposal to build a brand new acute hospital on the Epsom site. It was very much more substantial than the plan you have just put up on the table there. So whilst I don't want to cast aspersions on the work you have done, my request number 1 is that there is an independent assessment of whether you really can build an acute centre that's going to have many hundreds of extra beds on the site at the front, consistent with planning rules, consistent with the ability to deliver adequate parking on the site before any sale takes place. My second point is this. Yes, we're going to have to build more houses in the area, but more houses mean more healthcare requirements. And I think we've got particular healthcare requirements in this area. I spent an afternoon with the ambulance service a few weeks ago, frankly, ferrying the frail elderly from either home or residential care homes to A&E. They shouldn't be in ambulances and they shouldn't be in the A&E department. What this area desperately needs is more social care facilities, and what I think it also needs is a social care facility that is integrated with the hospital site, so that actually those people aren't dumped in A&E, and I've had family experience of this as well. There's somewhere that's more akin to a nursing home that they can go in either for a temporary respite or to give them a chance to stay for a few weeks before the social care teams manage to sort them out for the longer term. So it seems to me that there's a need that's been there for a very long time, and that says if there is surplus land here, social care should be absolutely top of the list. Now I have no problem, there is already, Rowan House already has accommodation for health service staff. I have no problem with accommodation being put on the site for health service staff. And it is true, there are 1 or 2 bits, for those who look around, there are 1 or 2 bits at the very back of the site where they wouldn't be missed by the hospital. But a blanket sale of that piece of land, I think it is the wrong time in terms of the plan for the long-term acute hospital, and I think it's the wrong plan to sell it for housing. So I'm encouraged by what you're saying today in terms of willingness to go back to the social care issue. But the difficulty is that because of what's happened, there is a lack of trust that that's what's really going to happen. So what I would ask for, I think a lot of this issue would dissipate if you were to give a commitment, first of all, about managing this process alongside the consultation on the future of the hospitals, and the second, actually, to bring a healthcare facility onto the site that is going to add to it, rather than simply losing part of the hospital to do something else. And I do think also we need to keep some provision for primary care, because we're going to need more GP practices in the area, or there is a case for a GP service centre on the site as well in that area. I understand the financial problems, but this is, as you just described, a 3-year programme. This land doesn't have to be sold to raise capital in this financial year if the money is going to be spent over 3 financial years. And my other offer to you is to come with you to see NHS improvement, your regulators and bosses, to argue the case that this can wait 12, 18, 24 months while the long-term future of the hospital is sorted out, while we know what the implications are, while you carry out an independent assessment of have you really done your sums right and can this really be done, have you got enough space? I couldn't really see much space for quite substantial builders' compounds on that map. For you to have serious conversations with social care providers about bringing a facility onto the site that would add real value to it and would really strengthen the future of Epsom Hospital. So I would urge you to follow those 2 paths. The board today to commit to making a priority of a social or healthcare facility to come onto that site. It does bring in less money than a big intense housing development, but I'm also very happy to argue with you for NHS improvement to get some extra capital in place to deal with some of the issues. I'm happy to come with you to see them. But above all, I'm happy to argue with you to them that you should be given the space not to do this right now until the future is more secure, until you can look properly at the other options and make sure this is planned really carefully and not just a kind of rapid sale in a particular financial year.
We will take more questions in a minute, but just to respond to Chris, thank you very much, Chris, for those observations. I think that, I absolutely, as chairman of the trust, we want to work with you, with the local community, to get a solution which does deliver for Epsom and delivers all of the new facilities which are so really needed, and everyone can see that. I'm sure there is a way through to do that. I'm just going to ask Daniel to address a couple of your specific points, and then we'll take questions from the floor.
So thank you, Lawrence. So start with the independent assessment. So our commissioners have commissioned this week an independent assessment of the building plans in our strategic outline case. So that's for Epsom, St Helier and Sutton. So they can be assured that in the run-up to getting to a public consultation, what we have said is buildable is buildable. So that is about to start. And I'm very happy to commit to say we will not complete a land sale in the time that they're going to do that piece of work. So if it comes back and the independent assessment says you can't do this, we're going to have to think again. So I can give you that commitment. The second big commitment about is it possible for the NHS to let us defer our land sale for a period of time? So we've begun that conversation too. And they've gone away to have a look. That is going to take weeks because, as you know, NHS finances across the country are quite precarious. And having sufficient cash to cope with us not generating the land sale is quite a big ask in the national context. But it may be really, really helpful if you came with us next time we had that conversation to see where it has got to. But we have asked for it. But we haven't yet been given an answer which says they can manage it, and therefore we feel we have to carry on until a point where they say, do you know what, we're not going to put Epsom and Helier in big problem if you don't do this. So it'd be good to have your help on that. In terms of securing a social care provider, it's quite a complex process, this, because we are not a social care provider, and the county council contracts out most of its social care to the private sector. So we are encouraging private sector providers of social care to come forward as part of the process, but there are lots and lots of them. And so I can't just go and finger one and say, would you like to come and do this? Because we'll get into a procurement problem. But we are trying really hard to encourage the providers of social care to come and say, would you like to do this? And I might have begun a conversation about something called extra care housing. So that's where you build normal housing that people live in, but provide support to people in their houses, as opposed to it being a nursing home or a residential home. So we're exploring that now too. So we are actively in the social care space. I just can't commit to how it will yet land. In terms of some of the specifics, so on the car parking, you'd end up with a 4-storey, multi-storey car park if you built the new acute facility at Epsom, not just one more deck. And so the building that we're going to build already for the deck will be sufficiently with foundations to enable you to put on more floors. The number of beds in the building we would propose for Epsom is somewhere between 400 and 500. That's the same number of beds that we've already got on the site. So you would double the amount of healthcare capacity that we can deliver in that new building. So perhaps the picture doesn't give it justice. It's £300 million for building that building. It's a very big building. And in terms of more GP services, we're bringing more and more GP services onto the site, and they're going into the enlarged A&E. And I don't think it will be long before we have a GP practice, or the GPs in Epsom collectively working together to provide primary care from the Epsom site, as well as urgent care. So I think that was all your points.
Right, lots and lots of questions, so I'm going to go around the room. We'll start with Bob.
I'm going to be awkward and be horrid. Right. You've mentioned A&E at Epsom. I don't think that. I'm sorry.
I think that people can hear me anyway. You've mentioned A&E at Epsom, but I don't think there is A&E at Epsom. The people around the room, I don't think they understand what A&E is, right? It's an urgent care centre that you have at Epsom at the moment. No, and somewhere we need this defined, Daniel. It's so good talking A&E because this lady who sits next to me, she understands something completely different to what I understand. And I understand it because I come to the board meetings. So I'm going to urge everybody to come to the board meetings and understand what goes on.
So let me ask Drew, our medical director, to explain the difference between an urgent treatment centre, medical emergencies, and trauma.
So I work here, I'm Ruth Charlton, I'm a consultant paediatrician here and I'm medical director. And I can say quite clearly that we do have an A&E here that provides an accident and emergency service to the population of Epsom. Now, the difference between an A&E and an urgent care centre is both around the staffing levels that you have on site 24/7, the ability and the acuity of the patients that actually that service can safely treat. And we have a fully functioning A&E department that receives 999 calls and takes patients with all degrees of acuity. That is not the definition of patient cohort that goes into an urgent care centre. So what we don't have is 24/7 surgery undertaken on the Epsom site, but we have the ability to receive patients who have potential surgical issues to stabilise and transfer them to St Helier for their acute surgery.
So I have a broken arm. Will you fix it for me here?
It depends. Most broken arms actually don't need acute surgery. So you'd be seen, you'd be assessed, your x-rays would be undertaken. And if it was felt you needed surgery immediately because the health of your limb was threatened, then you'd be stabilised and transferred across to St Helier for surgery. And that's the pathway.
Can you do what I asked, Daniel? Can you please explain what A&E is in writing, right?
Bob, we're
That's
gonna-
helpful, Bob.
Bob,
perhaps.
we'll move on because
No, it's very important.
Let's start here. Thank you. Can you say who you are?
Yes, my name is Edward Reynolds. I'm a neurologist and I've worked for 54 years in the NHS, 5 of them supporting neurology here, 12 supporting general practice in Epsom, where I live, and the rest elsewhere in tertiary care in London. I've seen the best and the worst of the NHS, some very, very good NHS, and this is an example, I think, of the worst of the NHS for the following reasons. Anyone who knows anything about the history of medicine, the history of the NHS, and the history of this area will know that if you want to be a centre of excellence, then you have to have room for expansion.
Exactly.
There has been no, in all my life as a consultant, there has never been a centre of excellence that has remained a centre of excellence by contracting. And I have to say I have great sympathy with the Chief Executive and the Board. And you very clearly outlined the challenges you face, and I've seen those all over London. And I sympathise with you. But the issue is whether your solution is the only solution. And I think this is a short-term solution, very attractive, because it's financially attractive to sell off. I've seen it going on all over the last 30 years. This is a classic example of the triumph of short-term financial gain at the expense of long-term clinical standards. And if Epsom wants to remain in the forefront of the new NHS integrating physical, mental and social care, then it must have room for expansion. I'm not impressed by these contracting figures. And that's all I need to say based on a lot of experience. Thank you.
So I suppose I would just say 2 quick points in return. We are allowing for a hospital as big as the one that is currently here to be here in the future, if that, no, an additional one, if that is what is required. So you can go from a 400-bedded site to an 800-bedded site on this campus in our plan. So in terms of future-proofing expansion, providing this independent review that has now already been commissioned says that what we say is true, that will be true. The second thing is, I think it would be really good for you to talk to many of the clinicians who are currently working in Epsom Hospital site. And they are absolutely sure that what we are doing is the right thing for treating patients in the here and now. Because
I can refute that. I know some of them, and they don't all agree with that.
So,
What they don't want to do is lose their job, Daniel.
so do you want to chip in move on that?
So what I'd say is that we've got about 240 consultants, and the vast majority of consultants, well over 200 of those consultants, have actually given in writing that they can see that in terms of providing safe 24/7 consultant-delivered care, which is what we all want for ourselves and our families, consolidating the care of our sickest patients on one site is the best way forward.
Right, let's move on. I'm doing this at random because I'm sorry I don't know too many of you.
This gentleman here.
I'm on the right. Sorry, which one?
Councillor Baker.
Councillor Baker. Thank you.
I'm Councillor Richard Baker. I'm Chair of the Health Liaison Panel at the Council. Now, we're very sympathetic to the challenges which Daniel and the board faces here. It seems to be the wrong approach, however. We are, as a council, under extreme pressure now from the government to build lots of new houses here. And we're talking about 8,000 plus in the next 15 years, which will lead to a possible increase in the population of the borough of 20,000. To me, it seems completely silly to start selling land off, given the increase in population. Now, we don't get any help from the government at all as regards infrastructure. So if we don't preserve what we've got, we've lost it. It's gone. And remember, if you sell the land, it won't come back. So if you need to expand, if you need to expand to build, to cater for the higher population in the borough, which we foresee, and which the government will force us to do unless we come up with some plan that they will accept, then we lose the ability to run a sustainable facility in the borough. So that's all I would say.
You're just selling seats.
Yeah, I think they are very valid points, and you're absolutely right that the government has instructed all local authorities to build more houses and given targets to each local authority to do so. As part of the exercise that's currently going on, not run by us, but run by the commissioners, my understanding is that they're taking all of that into account in their analysis as to how acute facilities are going to be provided in the future. So whilst I take your point that there is going to be a large number of new houses here in Epsom, that's the same for everywhere else, and I can hopefully assure you that those figures are being looked at and taken into account in the future planning of what is going to be put in place in this part of South West London and Surrey. Right, we've got time for a few more. So.
Can you all hear me? Yeah. Can you shake your hand like that? So we're all together. My name is Dr. Jamil. I'm a GP. I've been in this country for about 60 years. I've been practicing doctor for more than 50 years in the NHS, mainly in southeast London. I moved to Epsom. I moved to Cheen in about 3.5 years ago. I want to say, I've been around the world, I've seen many, many hospitals, and I want to compliment both of you and Epsom. You're doing a fantastic job under the circumstances. You know, you can ask for the moon, but you don't always get the moon. But looking around, it's my second visit here, I really am impressed by what you're doing. My main reason for coming here is that I was invited to come here on the request of Chris Grayling, and I fully endorse his views and the views of my previous speaker. You know, land is something that you get rid of, you lost it forever. But what we are saying is delay the decision to make better use of that land. And you know, there are various ways, you know, like social care, you know, like people, you know, who can't live distance away, you know, who in fact support the hospital is built on the care of patients. So we need, you know, we need housing for patients, you know, who need special needs and so forth. And in this day and age, you know, not only we need new buildings, we need more IT and so forth. And that's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
There's a whole forest of hands. We are not going to get through everybody who wants to ask the question. I'm very sorry about that. But people who I think, from my memory, have had their hands up for a long time. Certainly, the lady here, person there, and person there. So start here.
I'm Bernie Muir, County Councillor for Epsom West, and from your presentation, I've got a few questions, but from your presentation you mentioned that you've revised what would happen on that land as to put upon social care provision, affordable housing for NHS. Now, I'd hate to think that those were small token gestures at the corner of a little plot of land to say you tick the boxes following some consultation. That would need to be there. But in terms, I think we can't dismiss this business about the building that has to take place, not just in this borough, but every borough between here, St George's and Helier. I mean, I'm on the Environment Committee and the Planning Committee. We are not going to be building any more roads. We are not going to be changing the transport systems anytime soon. We've got to knock £100 million off our budget again this year. So, you know, we need this hospital, we need it to be in the right place. But we need it to be the right size. You mentioned, you know, your new plan, you say departments. What departments? What's going to happen here? Because if it actually involves people having to travel between here and St Helier, your paramedics have actually laughed at the times that you've said it takes to get between these hospitals in your consultations. You know, this is not going to happen. We have particularly high needs here for adult social care, for mental health issues, which bring with them health issues. We have a lot of people who are looking after sick children and sick adults. You know, we actually are going to need increased care in this area, and I do not understand how you can think about doing anything now when you don't know the future of the three hospitals. As far as I'm concerned, we are treading a path here which is a very slippery, calculated decision to put us in a position where we're in the weakest position when those three hospitals are looked at. In regard to your saying you had these letters from consultants, I happen to know that most of the consultants and staff that I've spoken to, from top to bottom, are saying they are writing what they don't believe because they're actually scared for their jobs, because the people who have stood up and have had an unfortunate thing. If you were to do a completely anonymous consultation with your staff, they have said they can pull holes in every single one of the parts of the consultation that has been given to the public. This is, I think, a disingenuous plan to actually put up a project somewhere else on the back of losing what we need and will need increasingly more in Epsom. And I, for one, will fight this every step of the way.
Thank you for that. I would just, on your point about the consultation, I would assure you that the consultation, which is now being led by the commissioners, by the CCGs, there's a joint committee between Surrey Downs, Sutton and Merton CCGs. They are looking at the future. It's not us, it's them. The commissioners are doing this, and the commissioners are looking at all sorts of data and information, including potential population growth, potential housing growth, and all of that is going to be taken into account by them. I understand your points, I understand your worries, but I would hope that you can trust that the commissioners are doing a professional piece of work to look at the future. We don't know. We don't know what they're going to say. We honestly do not know what they're going to say.
So I'd just like to come back to one thing.
I just want to say something to that, please.
No, I'd just like to go first, right? So you just raised the pitch into a whole massively emotional level about this. So I'd like to give you some emotion.
Please don't
back.
start mansplaining what I'm doing.
No, I'm not trying to mansplain. I'm trying to say that you have a trust board that is completely committed to both Epsom and St Helier hospitals. We can't do our job if the staff in the organisations don't have the trust in us. What we can all see in the here and now is that if we don't spend a lot of money on both Epsom and St Helier hospitals, we can worry about the future in 5 to 10 years' time. There won't be a future. Because you can't carry on without fixing the buildings that we're currently providing care from.
You don't need to sell them now.
So if there is a way that we can go with Chris to our regulator and they will say, you can carry on spending all the money that we know you need to spend, and we will find a way of you not needing to sell the land, do you know what? We'll do it. But until that happens, we have to protect the ability to provide you and your family in Epsom with buildings that are safe to provide care from. Because you don't want to turn up in A&E in an ambulance, only for the ambulance to be told you've got to go to Red Hill Hospital because sadly this A&E is closed because we can't admit you if you are sick. So you can. So I'm just giving you the same intensity back that you just gave, and do you know what? Perhaps we're both right. So perhaps what we should do is we should show you in more detail everything that we are planning, and I'd welcome that opportunity.
And when will you do that then?
So if people want to come and see in more detail, come on. Six. Right? You can come and we'll give you a whole tour and do all the detail if you like. That's supposed to say
6th of September for a tour. Time is pushing on. I'm only going to be able to take 2 more, I'm afraid. So
Shame! You just want your lunch. Hold it at a proper time. That's what I'd say. It's a ridiculous one.
You should allow us to have another meeting where we can discuss this, because there's a lot of people, we have a lot of feelings about what goes on in our area and what we fund. Yeah. You don't own it.
First of all, I'd like to say I do have some sympathy with you, because it seems to me that you are sort of battling a Tory austerity policy. They continue to pursue and a 60-40 no deal Brexit policy, which isn't going to help either. On to my concerns. My first concern is affordable housing. What do you class as affordable? Is it affordable for someone like me, 24 years old, to purchase? And secondly, will the developers simply sit on the land, like a lot of developers do, until the price goes up and then build, ripping us off again? And lastly, I didn't hear any kind of mental health provisions in your long-term plan when building more facilities, so if you could address those, I'd be very thankful.
So on the issue of mental health, so we are not the provider of mental health services in Epsom. That is a different organisation. And that organisation, Surrey and Borders, are going through a similar process to us to assess where do they want in the future to be providing the inpatient part of mental health from. In the service we get from them is about if we have patients who have mental health issues, they need to provide us with psychiatrists and psychiatric nurses. And I'm pleased to be able to say there's a really big investment going in to provide more clinicians, because it is a really growing issue, particularly for older people and for younger people, that there are lots more mental health issues. So there is more money going in, so there are more mental health clinicians working on the site. On the questions about the developer and the planning, so we can't force any of that to happen. I'm hopeful that when the agreement we end up with the council, that the council will then be able to force that whatever happens actually happens in a timely basis. But you know, I can't stop a developer being a land bank. But I think the demand is.
You don't sell it. You don't sell it. You don't sell it.
Right, that chap there, thank you.
Thank you very much. The pictures you showed us of Epsom and ditto St Helier are from decades of neglect, and you're forced to use capital for revenue. We're arguing about please sell the family silver off nicely, but instead of that, we need to be asking Chris Grayling not to help you have another set of delays, but to put his back into asking us for the new hospital we badly need. Richard Baker recently wrote to me, as for the new acute scheme, this seems to be a non-runner, given the intelligence we receive from Chris Grayling, who says that, in such straitened circumstances for the NHS, despite the new money in the pipeline, the government would not consider such a big investment for a trust which is already performing better than most. Chris needs to take us to see the Minister to say decades of neglect needs to come to an end, and we need this investment as soon as it possibly can be.
Oh, next one. Just go there and then.
Thank you. As the staffing challenges caused by Brexit and the current hostile environment bite, and will only continue to get worse, we're already seeing it in both health and social care, has the board considered retaining some of the land to work with the housing association and guarantee housing for hospital staff?
So the answer to that is yes. That's what NHS affordable housing would be. But on the subject of attracting staff to work here, it's really hard to attract staff to work in your hospitals if they know that they're going to have to work in 35 degrees centigrade. That if they know that, so when you talk to Ruth's colleague James about how do they have to do ward rounds in nephrology, which is the bit he works in, and they do the ward round, and they say, right, who needs to be in a single room because they're so sick, or they're dying, or they're infectious, and they get this list of all these patients, and then they say, well, we've only got a third of the number of single rooms that we need. How are we going to prioritise the people who should all be in a single room when you don't have enough? Now, having to do that does not attract the best, it makes it harder to attract the best people to come and work for your organisation. Because clinicians want to be clinicians, providing amazing care. They don't want to have to juggle working in a really difficult environment at the same time as providing great care. So the more we spend on making our buildings fit for purpose, the easier it is for us to attract people to come and work for us in a constrained workforce. So I think the World Health Organization calculated the number of vacancies there are in healthcare across the world. It's 4 million people. Right? There are 4 million empty nurse and doctor jobs across the world. So the world needs to train huge numbers more clinicians. So it's not a Brexit issue, it's a world issue. And we've got to make ourselves as the most attractive place for people to come and work in such a constrained labour market.
Thank you, Lawrence. To be honest, most of mine is going to go to Mr. Grayling, but Mr. Grayling, I completely agree with a lot of the points that have been made, that land cannot be replaced. Money is created every time the government spends. We're a currency issuer. We cannot run out of money. Your government, well, the government of the Conservative Party needs to use its currency issuing powers to give trusts like this the money they need. They're starving them. They need to give the councils the money they need. And they need to put money into investment. These people are trying, it is, I'm afraid, because they are trying to sell land because they have no choice. Yeah? They sell the land, there's nothing else. They sell the land, there's nothing else. They can't, and I'm afraid there's only so much the trust can do. I mean, I argue with them on a regular basis about the acute centre and that, but in the end, Mr. Grayling, Mr. Scully, Mr. Blunt, and the other MPs who are not in your party from this area are in the best position to argue, not with NHS England or NHS Improvement,
but with the Cabinet, with Mr Hammond, to get the money that this trust and others like it all up and down the country need to provide the service for us. Oh, but one thing, how much did those banners cost to design, have put up?
So they were £5,000 each. All inclusive.
Wow.
Very good value.
Okay, so, thank you.
Yeah, do I need a mic? I'm just saying that I agree about one of the buildings being very hot. My mother was in the Northey Suite some years ago, and it was a day like this. It was sunny, but it wasn't particularly warm. And the temperatures were such, I had to go around in the morning to get a fan to put it on. I don't know how many people have died in this heat wave because of the poor buildings here, but I have to say it took me ages to figure it out. I had to visit with my sister every day for the next few years in a care home to give her a drink, because all my appeals to the staff fell on deaf ears. You do understand that the Liverpool care pathway is illegal. I can't come to any other conclusion than the fact that this is taking place in the hospital and in various nursing homes. It took me way, way too long to figure it out, but it does appear to be murder by dehydration.
Thanks very much for that observation, and we're going to move on.
And you could be hit with corporal murder charges. It does seem to be another cost forward.
Right, so we'll take the lady with the yellow. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Jane Holmes and I've come here from Bookham. My question to you is, what is the age of the hospital? When was it first built?
Well, so on this side,
On this side.
it's harder to answer than St Helier's. St Helier's easy. The whole thing was built between 1937 and 1941. On this side, we've got buildings that start off from the Victorian age and go all the way up to the 1990s. So one of the reasons why where you want to put the new acute facility on this site is it's got to link into the 1990s buildings. So the ones that Sir Adrian White donated the money for are the best buildings the Trust has across its estate. So they're all, other than the windows are all falling out and we need to replace them, but the actual building is as good as we've got. That's the new bit.
I understand all that, but my query is that why wouldn't there have been some maintenance programme? Where's the maintenance contract between then and current day issues?
So this is my first point about planning blight. So because essentially since Epsom and Helier was created in 1999, there has been an ongoing debate about what to do about Epsom and Helier. We have not been able to secure big investment to sort out the buildings, because every time you say you'd like some money, they say, well, we don't know whether you're going to carry on being a hospital or not, so why should you get it? So the only money, put simply, the only money we've been able to have every year for the last 20 odd years is about £10 million of capital. And that £10 million has to maintain the buildings, buy medical equipment, and sort out the IT. It's not nearly enough. And so you end up with, you just can't maintain the buildings to the standard that you want to because you don't have enough money. And that's how we've ended up with this thing called critical infrastructure backlog maintenance of £80 million. And that's why it's so amazing that finally we have £100 million to sort it out. Because we have made the case successfully which says, we are well-run hospitals, we provide good care, and we look after the money. Now please in return, will you help us carry on enabling us to do that in the here and now? And we made the case, and it's been successful. It took a lot of negotiation, it took a lot of support from everyone around us to get the money, and because we're going to spend the money, we're going to be we're able to secure the future much better than we would if we didn't. So I think it's taken us several years to get to this point of focused effort, and we don't want to lose the chance.
Can I just say one more thing? That if you're doing new builds and you're renovating areas, have you got an ongoing maintenance contract, or are we going to be in some years' time in the same situation that we're hearing today?
So yes, we have, and we're spending more and more money on it. So if you take our lifts, we've gone from a maintenance contract which says we'd like a 2-hour response time. So we now have a maintenance contract which says we've got a lift maintenance engineer between Epsom and Helier on site 24/7. That's like 150 grand that we weren't spending to achieve that before. But and we have got increasingly good maintenance contracts on all the equipment. So we're in the middle of a whole radiology replacement program of replacing 29 pieces of radiology kit, and we have bought a platinum level of service to go with that as part of the deal. But all of that costs money. So when you look at one of the reasons why we're spending £3 million a month more than we get in income is because we're accepting that we have to just carry on spending more money on maintenance and keeping the thing going, because that's the right thing to do. So we're not cutting the corners that happened in the past.
Okay. At the back in the middle. Thank you. Yeah. There, and then the lady behind you.
Hello there. Yeah. Firstly, Daniel, thank you for your exposition. It was very helpful. I'm just struggling with the numbers. I'm Nigel Collin of College Ward Residents Association, living in Epsom. You say you're spending £3 million a month, therefore you're going to have a projected deficit of £36 million this year, compared with the forecast of what you agreed, the target of £14 million. You say to remediate that, you've got to take land sales of, say, £20 million off it, and then get a bonus of £15 million from the NHS. Now, this doesn't make sense, because if you're putting your land sale capital receipts against your revenue expenditure, you've got a mismatch, and that cannot be correct. So I'm assuming your £3 million, you've actually got some capital expenditure anyway.
So I kind of thought we might get a detailed question about money, but so in one slide, trying to set out the financial plan for the year, we've been set only make a deficit of £14 million. We spend £3 million a month more than we get in income, makes $36 million. We've been asked to absorb increases in costs of £20 million. So one of those is the pay rise the government have given for NHS staff, which is very welcome, but that's £5 million of that 20 is pay rise, right? So you end up with a £56 million problem. Yeah. To get the balance back down to 14, you have to make internal savings of 17 million, a land sale contribution of 10, and if we deliver those two things, then we get £15 million of bonus, of which 10 is from delivering the money, and 5 is if we deliver the standard for A&E. And then, very simply, that all adds up. But if you want to spend a good couple of hours with Rakesh, our CFO, then we can go through it, because there's many ins and outs in each of those lines. But
sorry, Daniel, thank you for that. Daniel, thank you for that. That's clear. But you are taking capital receipts and pushing them against revenue, albeit half your 20 million. Now that can't be good accounting.
So the amazing deal we negotiated, which I'm not convinced many other trusts are ever going to get, is that we, so this is talking very simply and isn't completely technically correct, but it's the best lay explanation. The money that we get from the land sale, we're allowed to use the cash to pay off our deficit, and then we are able to, on the back of it, draw down capital from the government in the form of a loan. So it's a bit like getting the money twice. But it's quite a, if you want to spend time with Rakesh to explain the intricacies of how that happens, it's quite complicated. But the gist is, essentially for every pound of money we generate from land sale, we get £2.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Right.
But that's only £2 once.
Yes.
The lady behind you, actually, because she's had her hand up for a long time.
Hello there, my name is Helen O'Connor. I'm an officer from the GMB Trade Union. And one of the points I wanted to make is that there's a staffing crisis at both St Helier and Epsom hospitals. I was walking around St Helier last week, and the resounding message I was getting from nurses I was speaking to is we have no staff. And I just wanted to know what steps are being put in place to increase the staffing complement on the wards, because if there's a low staffing complement on the wards, that's dangerous for patients. And we also have to address issues of low pay. I want to take this opportunity to invite everybody in this room to the St Helier pay protest, which is taking place at 12 o'clock outside St Helier Hospital next Tuesday. And I hope you can all come along and support hard-working NHS staff. Thank you very much.
So we know we need more clinical staff. Since I came into post, we have halved our vacancies for clinical staff from 20% of staff being vacant to 10. But 10% of posts being vacant still translates to 300 nursing vacancies. We are putting so much energy into recruiting, and we did have a big influx of nurses from Europe, many of whom have gone back. But now what we're doing is growing our own. So we have 120 people that we are paying for nurse training in one form or another, whether it's to go from being a healthcare assistant to being an associate nurse, whether we're training qualified nurses to become specialist nurses. We're spending the best part of £1 million on nurse and clinical training, in addition to what is funded nationally to enable us to recruit. Because the sustainable way of staffing our local NHS is to get as many local people as possible to think that a career in the NHS is the right thing, and we want to support as many people as possible to do that. That's how to get a sustainable workforce. And we know we have a call at 8 o'clock every morning, which Arlene, our chief nurse, leads to look at nurse staffing on both sites, because we know we have gaps. And we have to do our very best to make sure that the gaps are filled with temporary staff to make it safe. We are almost 100% confident that we have the minimum staffing levels everywhere to keep things going. But the minimum isn't really where you want to be. You want to be at a much higher level of staffing, and it is really hard. I know you're asking about nurses. On doctors, we have just done the most extraordinary 6-month piece of work, and we've managed to reduce our doctor vacancies from 100 to just over 50 in the rotations that just started in August. And you can see in the first week since they all came into post what's happened to our agency expenditure. And on the graph where medical doctor expenditure was like this for agency, in 1 week it's just done that. So it's an ongoing, massive piece of work that we want to get right, and we're really happy to work with you and the other unions to make us the most attractive place to recruit staff, because nobody wants us not to have sufficient staff.
Thank you. I'll let it go on longer than we planned, but I am going to draw it to close fairly soon, but there are still a few hands up I'm going to try and get around. If you can make your point succinctly and quickly, that would be greatly help. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Touch and proceed. So on that slide, we had the budget for last year. What I work in risk management, maybe they're young. What would the board have to do if you did not get the money from selling the land and the payback from the government? What would the board actually have to decide in order to cut?
So if we don't do the land sale, and we can't work with Chris to get to a place where the NHS lets us knowingly not do the land sale, we will be in a really difficult place, because we will not have the cash to carry on doing the investment that we have planned. So we're going to have to scale back the amount of money we spend on our buildings. And if we don't make the land sale and don't get the bonus payment that goes with delivering the financial plan, we have a real cash problem brewing as well, because that's £25 million of cash that we would need to spend. And so you get into the place that you're not going to not pay your staff, but you might get back into the horrible cycle of not being able to pay your suppliers. And you might get back into the place of then having to do emergency cash borrowing from the government, which comes at a very high interest rate. And one of the things that we've been really successful at, because we have demonstrated we are a well-run organisation, we've got out of all these horribly expensive loans for cash that are kind of like the price you pay if the system thinks you're not well run. So we don't want to go anywhere close to going back to that on the cash bit. But the real rub isn't that at all. The real thing is, if we're going to reduce the amount we're going to spend, how on earth are we going to prioritise what's the thing we don't do? and try and work out which is the thing that is least likely not to go wrong, so that you don't have to compromise a service. So I don't think anybody in this room would like us to be in that place, because we're all, there must be 100% commitment from everyone here that you want Epsom Hospital to carry on providing everything that it does in buildings that are fit for purpose. So we're all aligned on that. So I hope that what you say doesn't happen, because either we go ahead in a way that we can get a better consensus for, or we find a way of deferring it that doesn't prejudice Epsom and Helier.
My name is Chris Grice and I live in Epsom, St Margaret Drive. And it's a small suggestion, but one that when you're doing your rebuild on this site in the near future, you could incorporate the ambulance station, which would then free up the whole of one side of, and there's also a clinic in Church Street, that would free up the whole of that side to be redeveloped, the old police station, the whole lot, and that would be affordable. You could make that affordable houses actually in Epsom Centre, where people actually need it, rather than at the back of a hospital, up a hill, outside of Epsom. So I would suggest that you start by incorporating the ambulance station in your current facility, and if that means you have to use some of that land, then use it.
So that is
all ambulances.
So that is exactly one of the things we are actually currently exploring. So in the first part of the process for selling land, you offer it to the public sector and say, is there any public sector any public sector organisation that would like the land? And Surrey County Council tentatively expressed an interest they'd like to build an office block, because they're trying to rationalise their building. And we said to them, that probably isn't a very sensible use of the land, but we did put on the table, why don't we do a more sensible thing about the centre of Epsom? Because there is the Epsom Clinic and the ambulance station. They could come to this site, and then you can free up the plot you have said. So there is a tentative conversation going on to see whether that could happen, because that might be something that gets much easier to get support for. So I can't promise you that's going to happen. It's the beginning of a conversation. There are at least 4 different organisations involved in trying to make that happen.
Okay, we go to the back there.
Thank you. I'm Tina Mountain. I'm both the County Councillor and Borough Councillor for this area. So you're in my patch. I have 2, one big question, one little question. The first question is, are you satisfied that you are legally entitled to sell this land? Are there not national health covenants to say that the land has to be used for health reasons? And secondly, some time ago I asked if the bus that is always empty, that travels between Epsom and St Helier, could be used by patients who for some reason have an operation in Epsom but have their follow-up appointments in St Helier. So I wondered if you could update me on the progress of that.
So the answer to the first question is yes. The land we want to sell is an asset of Epsom and St Helier, and if we declare it surplus, our duty as a hospital is to get the best possible value for the land. You clearly have to get the best possible value for something you can get planning permission for, so that's why this dialogue needs to happen. But the answer is yes, very simply. And on the can we get our staff shuttle to take passengers, well, we've had a very positive conversation with Surrey County Council about them saying yes, they I think would support us in doing that. We haven't yet bottomed out a conversation with TfL, so because clearly the bus goes out of Surrey and into London, and London would have to agree as too. So we haven't landed that conversation with Transport for London, but we are on to, that would actually be quite a good thing to do, wouldn't it? Provide a bus service between Epsom and St Helier.
If only we had access to the Transport Secretary.
Very good, Jake.
Right, I'm going to take you for, and then we can sit, sir, at the back with the hand up.
Hello there, Mike Garnett, I live in Epsom. I fully understood
understand that you need to raise the money. I also understand that the buildings on the land are basically useless and need to be knocked down and rebuilt. But if you're going to future-proof the hospital, you want the room to expand and you want to keep the land for the benefit of the hospital to do with as you like in the future. Plus, it also gives more power to making Epsom the centre instead of splitting things between Epsom and Helier and wherever else. It's kind of like saying you've got the land, you've got the power to do with it, now what you need to do, and also to future-proof.
So I suppose that gets to the heart of what we've been talking about all this time. So we believe as a hospital trust that we have future-proofed the future. So we've got a plan for the here and now to keep Epsom Hospital going safely. And should, when we get to the point of making a decision about is there going to be a new hospital for Epsom and St Helier, if the decision is it's going to be at Epsom, we've got the land and the ability to build it. So we think that we can manage the here and now and we can manage the future. I can see we haven't convinced you all of that. And I think that's why when Chris said that we need to get an independent view to make sure that what we have just said is correct, that happens, and it will happen, and it will say what it says. We haven't been part of appointing the people to do the review, so I can't even tell you who is doing it. But I'm pretty sure they're going to be on site pretty soon having a look to check that what we have said is true. But
if it's already started, you must know who's doing it.
So
you said it started a week ago.
So they got appointed this week, right? Not by us, by the commissioners who are doing the piece of work on our future. And I'm sure they will tell us next week.
It's a fudge.
No, it's not a fudge. It's exactly as it should be. But if we had been part of the process of choosing those people, that would not be very objective.
So give the dates of the meetings they're having so people get the opportunity to go.
So that's not a set of meetings. That's a set of professional advisors.
The commissioners.
Oh, well, no, so if you go to the website they've set up called Improving Healthcare Together 2020 to 2030, then that's where they're putting all the dates of all the meetings they're having. And there'll be another round of meetings in September, of which 2 will be in this geography, 1 in Epsom and 1 in Leatherhead this time.
Why Leatherhead? You've already told me at a public meeting.
Lady there.
I know, I'm waiting.
Yeah, now
You can see me.
now is your chance.
Good morning, my name is Marianne Stocker and I'm an Epsom resident. Noticed in all the conversation this morning, there's not been any mention of this pipe dream of a new hospital at Sutton. So has that been stopped?
The study is currently underway by the commissioners, not by us. The commissioners, this joint committee that I've mentioned between Surrey Downs, Sutton and Merton CCGs, they're doing an extensive piece of work which builds on the work that we did last year, which will lead to a report, hopefully by the end of this year, would you hope, which will then lead to a period of detailed public consultation. I have to get corroboration I get the chronology correct, because it is quite confusing. But they are doing that work. They are currently assessing the best location as far as they as commissioners feel for the new acute facility, which has been agreed, but of course the location hasn't. I think it's really, really important that we all understand that the way that the NHS works now is that the money from central government doesn't come to us, it goes to the commissioners. The local commissioners at Surrey Downs, at Sutton and at Merton. They decide what services they want and they decide where they get those services from. They have agreed, and it's gone into the STP for London and for Surrey, Surrey Heartlands. They have agreed that there should be a new acute hospital, and it is for them to recommend where it should be based on all of the analysis that they're doing now. Once they've done that, and then they will go to public consultation, we will all know a lot more by next spring.
We've just got one rather key point, which is before they go to consultation, the government have to confirm that the money is available to build it. So the really good news we can report is that in terms of the prioritisation of schemes in South West London and Surrey, the only major capital scheme that the whole NHS is supporting in South West London and Surrey is the money for Epsom and Helier. It is the only one, so it is the number one priority. And now I have seen a confidential document called the London Estate Strategy, and it is right up there in the top list of big schemes that London is putting forward nationally that it would like support of. So whilst Epsom and Helier is both in Surrey and it is in London, for this process, London have taken the lead to negotiate upwards. But it is all with the complete support of NHS South, which includes Surrey.
Good. Every time I think I've seen all the hands go up, new hands go up. I'm going to try very quickly now. So these are sort of really quick fire. So if you can quick fire, start. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good afternoon. My name's Jeff Mouse. I would appreciate, instead of having this very small hall for us to air our views with, that you have a larger assembly and devote more time. Because fitting something into an hour when it's a huge subject is appalling. And I think you should think about your own public image if you want to carry this through. And we have a better facility and better advertised, because I didn't know about this programme till 8 o'clock last night. Now, there's a huge amount of interest in Epsom, in the hospital, and you should take it on the chin and do something about your PR and have a larger site. You know, we're just all crammed in, it's hot. I don't care if it's a tent in the car park, but you know, we should have a better deal.
At a better time. I mean, look at the age profile here. Most people are retired, many of us, certainly myself. How do you get working people here at this time? It's ridiculous.
So we think we've just actually been quite responsive, because Chris put in his email to his constituents he wanted us to use our board meeting to talk about this topic. We have reorganised the board to enable that to happen. We've never had so many people come to a meeting about Epsom Hospital before. I say we. There was, I know, 800 people came when there was Better Services, Better Value, which was a plan to close Epsom Hospital. When we did the engagement on our strategic outline case, well over a year ago, we did almost 50 public meetings at every time of day. I worked nearly every evening at a public meeting somewhere. We got to thousands of people. The CCGs are doing the same thing now, so if you go to the website, you'll see quite a lot of meetings. If we get to consultation, it will be everywhere in the geography at every time of day. It has to be, because we have to reach thousands and thousands of people. But in the meantime, thank you all very much for coming today.
But before we just go, are you going to confirm, Daniel, that you're going to work with Chris Grayling, you're going to meet up with him, and you are going to make a deliberate effort to find out if you can get some more money for this budget? Without selling the land?
Yes.
Thank you. Over there, and then at the back. So 1, 2, and then Teresa, go there. Thanks.
Hello. Right, the first thing I'd like to say is in 2016, we have the minutes from the Finance and Investment Committee meeting. Your Director of the Estates, Trevor Fitzgerald, is in the minutes talking about the Epsom Capital Works to move services out of areas to be sold and sell approximately a third of the Epsom site. So the plan to sell land has been there for a long time. I just wanted to make that known. You mentioned just now, and I think that's the thing I'll just focus on, the CCGs at the moment are doing that public engagement. It's on at the moment. It started in July. I don't know how many of you know about that in here. No. When you say you did lots of meetings, and you did, well, we went to a lot of them last year, and they're really important. You need to have your voice heard, but you don't know the meetings are happening. There have been 2 meetings in Epsom. One was in the daytime, one was in the evening. There have been 2 meetings in Sutton and 2 meetings in Merton. The plan is to do another 6 meetings perhaps in September. They may be in October now, because we went to a meeting and said if you do them in September, it's still during the school holidays. We care passionately about our hospitals, but the public are not being given the opportunity to have their voices heard about them. At the CCG meeting I went to, we were told by Merton CCG's leader, I don't know his correct title, I'm sorry, that in fact they will be looking at the case to keep acute services at Epsom and acute services at St Helier, instead of the plan to just give us one reduced acute service, which in every case gives us a reduced catchment area. The number of people in the catchment is 490,000 now. We suspect it's more than that if you think of the population increase. And it will be in every case smaller. Now, you talked about a broken arm. I'm sorry, I will carry on. My teenage nephew broke his arm. We took him to A&E at St Helier. He could not go home because he needed surgery. The doctor told us if we went home, she couldn't guarantee us having the surgery the next day, as he needed, because there were insufficient beds. She'd phoned 5 people, and this was in the summer, that day, to tell them there were no longer beds for them, they had to have their operations cancelled. We need more beds, we need more services. We can't sell NHS land and reduce things when the population is growing. You said it in your annual report last year. We need more clinical space.
Hi, I am working age and I work in the NHS and I'm a nurse and I work at Epsom Hospital quite a lot as a locum and out of hours, and in some ways I put my job on the line, I think, by saying this, but there is so much waste in this hospital and out of hours. It's awful. It's awful to see. You have a GP in A&E who often isn't that busy. It's, you know, you're getting it's not at all actually, I think, your fault. It's a bigger NHS-wide issue. But there's lots of patients who are coming through 111 who are inappropriate referrals, 2 out of hours. There's a lot of money being spent on locum GPs in A&E. And I see that as waste. And my husband's a doctor, we've worked in the NHS for years, and there is so much waste. And, you know, that is such a shame because it could be an incredible service. We don't see a future, really, for the NHS in so many ways, because there is not enough money, and there probably won't ever really be enough money. My other perspective is I'm a mum and I live locally. I've come here, I've left my children at home because I really wanted to hear what people say. My kids go to a local school, it's full. It's full, we have a teacher here, I can see her. Where are you know, affordable housing means young families. Yes, that's great, but where do these children go? You know, where are they going to play? Are they going to play? Where are they going to park? Are they going to park in the estate across the road? There's so many questions that I have about this, and yeah, 2 different perspectives, but equally emotional, I have to say.
Thank you for that. I really value the feedback, particularly from someone who works here on occasions. I think you're right in many ways. We are not an organisation, by which I mean the NHS as a whole. My wife worked in the NHS for 30 years, and she told me lots of stories about all sorts of areas of inefficiency and waste. And you are right. We still, in this trust, don't have electronic patient records, and you know, in the age when everyone goes online to book a train ticket or a holiday, it's bizarre to us that we.
It's such a shame that you're selling off the land just to throw into the pit.
Well, that's not quite what we're doing. There was a list of a whole load of new facilities, new outpatients, new day case, new paediatric, a whole load of new facilities which everyone in this room will benefit from. And the staff will benefit from as well, because they'll be in much better, more efficient, hopefully air-conditioned buildings. So we're not throwing the money away. Every single penny, if we sell that land, every single penny will be to benefit all of you. And that is something that we really are passionate about. So look, I'm going to close now. I would just like to sum up by saying firstly, thank you very much for coming. It's great when we get such a committed audience and people who are so engaged with the future. Daniel has made a commitment to work with Chris, to go and see the people at NHS Improvement, NHS England, to see what we can do about the money. Our aim is purely, as I have said, our aim is purely to provide great healthcare facilities in Epsom. And as I've said on many occasions, every single penny we raise will go straight back into Epsom. My final point, I think, is perhaps more general. This discussion, not this precise discussion, but discussions like this are happening in every single trust around the country. We have, as many people have said, a growing population. We have people living longer. We have a health service which has been, very, very constrained for the last few years. We have got a lot more money over the last few weeks, which is really welcome, but it's probably not enough, and it probably won't be enough. So we've got to continue all the time to get as best value as we can, and we've got to continue all the time to lobby for as much resource as we can. So you can take it from me and you can take it from our board, but that's what we will do. And I do also accept the point that there needs to be some form of forum where we can get together like this on a more regular basis, and we'll discuss that and we'll see how we deal with that. So thank you all very much for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.